So you've heard that old saying that if you do something you love, you never work a day in your life. And it sounds perfect, doesn't it? You're only thinking about your passion project all the time and you're getting rewarded for doing something you would have done anyway, even if money weren't involved. But of course it's slightly less easy than that here in the real world. But really, don't you owe it to yourself to at least investigate the possibilities? Now in this video I'm going to explain what I'm doing to chase down opportunities like this, and I'm going to flag up practical steps I think that might help you if you're starting to investigate it as well. Okay, let's start first off by actually getting clear in our minds what the criteria are for an enterprise that we're looking for. I don't think this is very hard because you could say we've already done it. What we're looking for is a role or a task or an interest that we find interesting or feel passionate about, spend a lot of time thinking about, and we believe there are avenues down which we can generate some income from. So let's not worry too much about the second point, because rest assured I'll have a couple of ideas I've used which can be applied when we get to it. In fact, it's important we don't start off with that point in mind, because it acts as a straitjacket to our thinking. When I've done this, I've sat down and I've just started listing things under a few topics to stimulate my thinking. The key is not to try and filter these at all. Try various headings like what do I spend my time thinking about during the day? If you have hobbies, write them down obviously, but also what do you like chatting to people about? What are you curious about? What areas of life do you think give you a kick? What are you good at? What do people compliment you about that you find quite easy? I'd expect to get maybe 20 things down after 15 minutes or so. So I'm going to overlay my thoughts and I'll show you what I come up with. So here's my list. I've shown it as a mind map just because it helps me to think of it if I group them together, but you can do it any way you like. Can I ask you to keep this list with you and revisit it over the next few days? I found that I blow hot and cold on some of these things after I've written them down, so I've added a few and I've crossed some off as well. But after a few days, I think at that point we can sit down and whittle the list down to say 5 that we can really say we're passionate about. Don't forget, it can be anything at all: politics, car mechanics, families, architecture, football, reading, absolutely anything. We have our hot topics now, and let's try another filter. If you ask yourself, will I still be interested in this in 5 years' time, does that change your list at all? Don't forget, we aren't looking at this stage at anything more than whether you're really engaged to the point where you'd happily spend your idle time thinking about this topic. And if that whittles down a couple more off the list, then great. But I say let's keep 3 options open at this stage. Now we're going to move on to the second criterion. Is there any way that we could make money from the things we've identified? I'm going to answer that question for you in advance. The answer will be yes. That's a bold statement, I know, but I'm practically certain because of the world we live in. One of the most influential ideas that has come out of the last 20 years or so is explained brilliantly in this book. In this book by Chris Anderson. It's called The Long Tail, and for our purposes we can summarise it as the fact that markets for any goods and services are now global, and the cost of communication with the markets are practically zero. That means that for what we're talking about, if we have an interest, an idea, a product, we can get in touch with almost anyone on the planet who shares that idea or might buy that product. But even more important than that, because we have access, we can now do something which is very popular on the internet. We can now niche down. That means to say, let's say we like cars. We like the look of them, but we're not so bothered about the nuts and bolts or the latest EV developments. In fact, our real passion is cars that were built in, say, the 70s. We love the ostentation of American cars at that time. Let's say especially Oldsmobiles. Without any effort at all, we've niched down from cars to a niche called 1970s American Oldsmobiles. But the really great thing is that it doesn't matter where we are in the world, we can contact people now with precisely the same passion, with practically no effort. We can communicate with them and share our passion. Of course, yes, we have a bunch of like-minded people. Some people call them tribes. But we also have a potential market too. There's a school of thought in this world that preciseness of the niche you can identify to is critical. I accept that in principle, but I think we can start off being a little less focused, at least until we've done some more research. Now the second stage is to check out how popular the niche is, and there are a few ways to do this. First is pretty easy, and that's just to use search terms, and the use of Google Trends will be invaluable. Now Google Trends is something you can investigate under your own terms. Just put it into Google and fill your boots. Basically it tells you how often Google is asked to look for specific terms, and it's a perfect way of finding out how big a market is both in your own country and worldwide. The next thing is to look at what's out there already for our interest group. Is there a magazine maybe? Is there a coffee table book? More importantly, is there a group of aficionados on Reddit or somewhere? You'll soon find your tribe. So we've got an idea, or at least a feeling, that there are people in the world who share our interest. The next stage would be to explore the world more, and that means joining the groups where possible. But at this point I think we should talk about another big aspect of this, and that is that there actually is a potential price to be paid for monetizing our passion, if you like. There's an administration burden, there's possibly a finance risk, you have increased pressure arising from the move from an interest to a business. In short, you may have prejudiced your enjoyment of your hobby or passion for the sake of the money. And I guess there's a question here that we all need to ask ourselves, and that is, are we willing to risk killing our enjoyment of our passion just to get more money? I'm going to finish the video here because I reckon that's a question I can't help with. I know in my case the answer to the question is yes, I am willing to risk it because I love the idea of chasing that goal. For me, there's actually enjoyment derived from thinking my way through the issues and the trade-offs. But I'll be back with the next step of monetizing what we enjoy in part 2 of this episode. See you there.